Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
so some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by author of emotional women's fiction and part-time artist, Kitty Johnson. Hello.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Great to be chatting with you. Let's jump right in. Let's talk about the new book, Prickly Company, which is out right now. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, thank you. Well, Prickly Company is the story of Frances Matthews, a widow who is a wildlife enthusiast and decides she wants to do something to make life easier for local hedgehogs. So the action takes place in a small close, and there are 5 houses. So she wants to get her neighbours on board, and some of them are enthusiastic, others less so. So really, it's the story of saving hedgehogs and how that goes. But also, mainly really, it's about the drama, the events that happen between the neighbours, secrets that come out. And it's about the individual neighbours' lives, because they're all dealing with different issues.
Yes, and similarly to the first novel, Five Winters, there's a lot of the themes around like friendship, family, parenthood, that kind of thing, kind of interweaving in this small neighbourhood around the focal point of the hedgehogs.
That's right. Yes. There's a couple who have recently adopted a young son, a second child, and that isn't immediately going well. There's a journalist who's been wounded in action and is now in a wheelchair. So lots of different dramas and emotional content.
Yeah, a varied cast of characters to
That's right.
Interact with each other and see how they come together. And your previous novel and this novel both being very well reviewed, especially like in large part to the way that you have portrayed those kinds of themes, that the parenting, the friendships, love, in a kind of realistic and emotionally compelling way. Is that kind of like a difficult thing to translate that lived experience into a fictional setting?
Well, it can be. You sort of have to open a vein.
Yeah.
I do draw on my own experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that I've experienced everything I write about. But
no, of course.
A bit like a method, like an actor. Imagine when they get a script, they search back into their lives and think, when have I felt that? And translate that into the way they act and roll. I think it's similar, really. Yeah,
there's a certain level of vulnerability to it, which I guess could be scary.
Well, I don't know. I think you just get used to it. I suppose it is at first, but I think it's good for you personally, really. You get really, it's quite cheap therapy, isn't it? Get rid of all these things that have been brewing, simmering inside you onto the paper. Give them all to your characters.
I think that's definitely not the first time I've heard that.
I'm sure it's not.
But yeah, it's definitely a healthy way of sort of confronting things that you might not be acknowledging in yourself that you see kind of bleeding out onto the page.
Yes, I think it can be, definitely. Yeah.
We kind of went straight onto the hard-hitting themes and the sort of emotional core of this, but it is on the surface largely about hedgehogs. And am I right in thinking that this aligns a lot with your real life, as you are actively involved with hedgehogs?
That's right, I am. Yes, I'm a volunteer driver for a hedgehog support charity called Hodmadods. They run a helpline, and when calls come in about injured or sick hedgehogs, if the caller hasn't got transport, then I go out and collect the hedgehog and take it somewhere where it can get treatment or help.
Oh, wow.
And hedgehogs is a big theme, hence the title, Prickly Company, in the novel. And that all came about from a talk at my local WI, Swallowtail WI. The charity that I've now volunteered for came to give a talk there. And there was a lot of enthusiasm in the group, so a couple of women became hedgehog fosterers. And through them, I learnt about hedgehog highways, which are ways to make life easier for hedgehogs, like leaving holes at the bottom of fences, wild areas in the garden, leaving out food and water, that kind of thing. And I started to think, well, a community doing this together would just be a brilliant theme for a book. And then I started to think about what goes on behind closed doors and things that you might not know about your neighbours. And it all seemed to gel together.
Yeah, no, that's a great thought. It is perfect for it. Now you think about it, because it's like a sort of an extra pressure to enforce on people on whether they accept that or not. And then obviously you've got all of the other underlying tensions, the individual personalities and things.
Yes, that's right. And I suppose the hedgehog holes, hedgehogs moving around the neighbourhood, they're a bit like the community developing and getting to know each other as well.
Yeah, I mean, the more you talk about it, the more kind of like everything falls into place. The puzzle makes perfect sense.
I was very happy when I thought of the two things.
Yeah,
because I've been a creative writing teacher for quite a while, so I'm used to working with groups, and I've always been fascinated by the way that people who don't know each other or don't know each other well, sort of when they meet each other, you don't really know what's going to happen, but then they bond and different personalities come to the fore. There's toing and froing. I love the way that groups gel. Interested in that.
Yeah. So how long had you been a creative writing teacher for?
Probably about 7 years, but I taught part-time all different kinds of things before that. So quite a lot of different group work. Right.
And this is your second novel as Kitty Johnson, but you've also published under Margaret K. Johnson. What sort of writing was that?
Yeah, Margaret is my actual name. Kitty is my pen name. It's the name that I would have given my son had he been a girl. That's why I chose it. As Margaret Johnson, I started off by writing romance, which was published by Women's Weekly and places like that. And then I met someone who was writing readers for Cambridge University Press for people learning to speak English. And I thought, wow, that sounds like something that would be good to get into. So I got in contact with Cambridge University Press and asked if I could send them a sample chapter. And they liked it. So I went on to have a lot of those published. And they were good fun to write because you would be given a word list and a grammar and grammar rules, and you had to stick to them according to the level of book you were writing. So if it was a starter level, for example, you had, only about 200 words you could use. So you really had to let the words dictate the story. It's a bit like doing a puzzle.
Yeah.
But if they were higher level books, you had to kind of deliberately use a lot of longer words. It was fun.
Oh, I see. I'm not entirely familiar with what a reader is. So is it essentially like a very simple story with the idea of fitting in specific vocabulary that people learning will have learned?
Well, these were original fiction.
Right.
And they also included sort of learning activities. Yes, the idea is they're page turners so that people learn English through reading what is hopefully a gripping book, and they're motivated to read it because they want to know what happens instead of boring text. That's the idea.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. And you published a lot of those before you kind of got back into doing more kind of free writing as... Did you publish anything else?
Yes. I had a go at self-publishing. So I decided I wanted to take the step and write what I really, really wanted to write. So I had to go. Well, I tried to get an agent for years and years and years, and that didn't work. So I tried self-publishing, which was great, but it's great for some people, but not for me. It's just too many different skills involved.
Yeah.
So I knew that I needed to try again to get an agent so that I could move forward.
Okay. Yeah, I recently had a self-published author on, and she was saying how to make it work, you do really need to have and maintain like a knowledge of the industry and marketing, publicity, and like so many things outside of just the writing itself.
You do, yes, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I understand.
It's brilliant. Some people do it so well.
Yeah, they really do. So I'm assuming the reason that you went with a pen name was because obviously the majority of the stuff you published under your name was this kind of reader fiction.
Yes. Well, it was actually Lake Union, my publishers, who asked if I would mind having a pen name. And I didn't mind after I thought about it, because I'm sure, just from my description, it sounds like my publishing history is complicated, which it was. So it's quite nice to have almost like a new start with a new name. And especially as I was writing what I absolutely wanted to write now.
Yeah.
So it was great.
Which was 5 Winters, I assume.
Yes, that's right. That's the first one they've taken. And after that, I had a contract for two more, the first of which is Prickly Company. And the second one from that contract is coming out next year, and that is called Closest Kept. Okay.
I assume it's not going to feature hedgehogs as prominently.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't feature hedgehogs.
I'd love to hear a bit about your writing process.
Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
So let's start with the fun one. Are you someone that does a lot of planning before a novel, or do you just jump in and see where it takes you?
I'm somewhere between the two. So I need to know the beginning. I need to know the end. I have some touchstones or stepping stones that I'm aware of in between. I need to have a very strong idea of my character so that they have started to kind of speak to me inside my head. Mm-hmm. And that was certainly the case with 5 Winters. The character was so strong, and I just wrote the first 2 pages and sent it to my agent. And those 2 pages didn't change hardly at all when it was published.
Oh, wow.
So I need to know that much. But after I've written about 20,000 words, I do a bit more planning and brainstorming.
Okay, right. So you kind of find your way for the first sort of quarter or third of the novel, and then you kind of just let it go.
Yeah, well, after, as I say, about 20,000 words, I firm up a bit more.
I meant the opposite.
Yeah.
Then you tighten it. Then you lock it down, and you tighten everything up, and you're like,
more.
Right,
but
let's see where this is going.
Having said that, things still evolve.
Yeah, of course, naturally. Even once you've finished, you'll have finished draft 1. That's going to evolve when you bounce it around with the editor or your agent or whoever.
Absolutely, yes. Closest Kept to the ending, for example, changed quite a lot.
Okay, well, there you go. And then as part of your process, obviously we covered with Prickly Company, you had, got involved with the sort of hedgehog community aspect of things. So you knew a lot about, like you say, hedgehog highways and things like that. Do you do a lot of research into your kind of novels during the planning process before you kind of get into the writing?
Yes, well, if it's needed, we'll do research beforehand. Sometimes if I get to somewhere, particularly with the first draft, where I need to research it more, I might just put a big star and scroll research, blah, 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 because I don't want to stop my flow.
Yeah.
I have been known to do things myself to experience them.
Okay.
Like, for example, performing stand-up comedy because I wanted to include it in a book.
Oh, wow.
So I went on a course in London for a weekend and then 3 weeks later went back to perform on stage in Greenwich for 3 minutes.
Okay. That must have been difficult.
Yeah, difficult, but extremely, you feel just such a rush afterwards. It's just amazing when people laugh. But it also, apart from the personal things you get out of something like that, just obviously makes your writing much more authentic. So I think in that case, I actually chose that as something I wouldn't dream of doing really, but would absolutely love to achieve. And so the writing was almost a reason to do it. I assume you wrote the jokes for the 3 minutes that you were performing? Yes, as a result of the course. Yeah.
Do you think you took some learning from that into like your future writing and like it has helped you kind of bring out some more humor in your writing?
I imagine it must have done, yes. I think there is. I like to make people laugh and cry in my writing, so I think there is always an element of humour there. And some people see more than others. I suppose it depends on someone's sense of humour, really. But yeah, I do definitely. I mean, those are the kind of books I like to read myself. Things that make me laugh and cry. You're going to ask me for examples now, and my mind will go completely blank.
No, that's fine. I feel like those books might be different for everyone in the same way that you say it depends on your sense of humor. I think equally for like whether you cry or not and stuff, there's some things that most people cry at, but like a lot of the time one person will cry at one thing when another person will cry at another thing. So I think there's so many variables with the specific books that make you laugh and cry. Yeah, I think you're right. But yeah, it's such a delight to read something like that because it's the juxtaposition between those two, I'm laughing, I'm happy, I'm crying, I'm sad. That juxtaposition really, you really know, I presume as an author, that you've succeeded if people tell you, I laughed and I cried. Yeah, and those sort of things happen in real life, don't they? Yeah. You can see humour in really dark times. And, I definitely have used those real moments in my fiction. Yeah. I mean, humour's often like a coping mechanism, isn't it? For grief and other human strife. Yeah. I mean, at my mother's funeral, for example, I still miss my mother. It was 6 years ago that she died. I miss her hugely still. But at her funeral, one of the men carrying the coffin was much shorter than everyone else. And so the coffin was really precarious. And, it's not funny at all, but it is as well. Yeah. But, fortunately, it wasn't dropped. Well, yeah, thankfully. Because that would not have been funny. No. I'd love to talk a bit back onto your process, and I'm wondering what your do you have like a specific space or like a setup that you write in? I have my office, which is where my PC is. But my method doesn't seem to just be one method. It just seems to depend on, I don't know what.
the book I'm writing, what sort of writing I'm doing. So I'll give you a few things that I do. I often like to start very early in the morning. So I'll be sitting up in bed 5:30 with a big cup of coffee and just look at my phone for a while and then start writing in my notebook. And then I'll type that up later on, and then I can probably carry on with it after I started typing, do some more original writing. I have a cat nap in the afternoons, always, and then I can do some more writing. Usually, then that's straight on the computer. But having said all that, I went through a phase earlier this year where I left the house at about 7:45 to go to my local library, because you can get in there early before it opens to the public with open access. And I wrote there and then came home and typed that up. And that seemed to really work well. But when my son was young, I've been known to write in indoor play areas, cafes, so wherever he was. So it doesn't seem to be one fixed way, really. It's just whatever is working at the time.
Yeah, but it does sound like once you do like start a new thing, you do sort of make it a routine, and it sounds like you're quite regular in terms of repeating the same things, even if they are changing. Yes, I am,
but I'm not harsh on myself. So if something is off, maybe I don't feel 100%, or there's a noise outside or whatever, I just give myself the day off, go for a walk, whatever, because thinking is just such a huge part of writing. Just giving yourself time for all the little puzzle pieces to click together. So I never feel guilty about that. But yeah, I am a pretty regular writer and committed, and get on with it, really.
Yeah, I think Terry Pratchett had a very similar sentiment on writing, where he said he only wrote a certain amount of hours or a certain amount of words per day, and he spent the rest of the time like playing so that his brain could be thinking about all of the other things he was going to write next time he sat down to write.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not always playing. Sometimes it can be, I don't know, something mundane like cleaning.
Yeah.
But I don't do that very often. I'm freely admit, not as often as I should, but sometimes you're in the middle of something very mundane and the ideas come. You just have to allow space for it to happen, I think.
Yes, that's it. Allowing space. That's a perfect way of putting it. Yeah. And that brings us to the point in the episode where we will venture over to our desert island, and I will ask Kitty, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
Well, I had to think about this quite hard because I knew the question was coming. And I did consider Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, which is a fantastic book about creativity.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, I think I need fiction. So I've gone for a Kate Morton book. And if you're familiar with Kate Morton, you'll know they're very big. They're long. They're hefty tomes. Yeah. So I get my money's worth. I've gone for The Forgotten Garden.
Okay.
And I went for that because there are 3 timelines, 1913, 1975, and 2005. And it starts with, in 1913, with a little girl sitting on a suitcase in Australia on a deserted quay. And it's a mystery about who she is because she doesn't know where she's come from. I love books about secrets and mysteries being solved, emotional books. Well, I would do because that's what I write. And I like the investigation. But I just think having a book like that would keep my own imagination going and keep my storytelling side of my brain going on this desert island. So that's why I chose it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you need to pick something that's unique to you and that will keep you kind of going at that time. I think that's a great choice.
Thank you.
And I believe Big Magic has been picked before. So in
I'm
this
sure.
hypothetical, if there is a sort of small library there of all the previous guests that have been on, you'll be able to find Big Magic
okay,
anyway.
that's comforting and reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. I've got some questions about being a UK author and having a literary agent abroad, and some of the lessons that you've learned about writing through the years, but that will all be in the extended episode exclusive to my incredible Patreon subscribers. Yeah, probably stay back on Earth where it's safer.
Yeah.
Amazing. What a fun way to round off the interview. Well, thank you so much, Kitty, for coming on the podcast and chatting with me and telling me and everyone listening all about your writing and Prickly Company and kind of your experiences with publishing. It's been really, really cool chatting with you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks ever so much. Thanks for having me on.
And for anyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Kitty is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at Kitty Johnson BKS, or on Instagram and Facebook at Kitty Johnson Books, or you can head over to the website kittyjohnsonbooks.com. To support the podcast, like, follow and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and follow along on socials. Join the Patreon to get extended episodes ad-free and a week early, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Kitty, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals. That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Save on O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner. Get 2 cans of O'Reilly Brake Parts Cleaner for just $8. Valid in-store only at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.